we've defined what demand is, and we explored the law of demand, and then we illustrated the law of demand, which is our demand curve. And all of that established under the law of demand is all else held constant. Just the effect of price on the quantity demanded is what we're showing there. Now we're going to look at things that change demand. See the little distinction in terms? Price changes the quantity demanded. These things change demand. When I watch CNBC, they will frequently refer to price affecting demand. I know they mean quantity demanded, but I've never tried to win friends and influence people by sending them an email or a tweet suggesting that they use the proper term because I know what they mean. And I think everyone who's watching it knows what they mean. But when we're first learning this, it doesn't work to say price increases or decreases demand. It just doesn't work. Price increases or decreases the quantity demanded. It moves the quantity that people would be willing and able to purchase along the demand curve. These things over here change demand. These are called the determinants of demand. I have that in quotation marks because we seem to be using a term like that to give people like me job security. It might be better said if these were called the shifters of demand, because what these things will do is move that whole curve. So they hold constant the price, and demand rises or falls due to these events. And this is a slightly different list than Miller. Every text, well, maybe not every textbook, but textbooks generally categorize events slightly differently. This is just a list that I'm kind of used to, and it works very interchangeably with Miller the way he has them listed. It could be listed in any number of ways. This works pretty well. So these are the determinants of demand. The first one is income, because demand represents people's willingness and ability to buy goods and services. So when people have more income at expensive prices or at cheap prices, they're willing and able to buy more. So if income rises, what that means is demand rises. So at expensive prices, let me put that better aligned. At expensive prices, the quantity that people are willing and able to purchase goes up. It's still kind of close to a few, but it's more than before. And at cheap prices, the quantity that people were willing and able to buy becomes even more than a lot. And everything in between rises as well if people are making more money or feel like they are making more money. That could happen like when the stock market does well. When the stock market is doing well, people see their retirement savings going up because retirement accounts are largely in the stock market. And so they see those statements with good numbers and they feel richer. And it's like this income effect where demand for a typical good or service, whatever it might be, is likely to rise. Let me circle back at the end to an exception to that. Prices of related goods are a second determinant. There are two kinds of related goods: complements and substitutes. A complement is something that goes with it. So that might go with it. So here we have the word prices. It could be something richer than prices. It could be like costs or something, right? Because let's start with a simple example. A complement for hot dogs is hot dog buns. So if you go to the grocery store and hot dog buns are on sale, what do you suppose is going on over by the hot dogs at the refrigerator aisle where the hot dogs are? They might be seeing an increase in demand because these things go together, and now the entire bundle of hot dogs and hot dog bun is cheaper, so people are inclined to buy those things together. So the demand for hot dogs is likely to rise, like we have here, when the price of the complement gets cheaper. And I don't want to put all the errors over here because these things are topsy-turvy. You kind of wind around and they vary a lot, which I'll explore in just a second. But let's go back. Let's look at this other term here, substitutes. A substitute for hot dogs. I have a rough time saying hamburgers. It's the first thing I kind of want to go to because we have explored our barbecue foods in the past. And some people like hot dogs, some people like hamburgers. But you do tend to buy a package of each when you're doing a barbecue, right? Grilling out, you might buy a package of each. That might make them compliments. So I don't want to go with hamburgers, but a substitute for hot dogs might be, I would say maybe mac and cheese, right? It's a cheap filling food, comfort food. When mac and cheese becomes more expensive, what might that do for people's taste for hot dogs? If I'm right, if they're substitutes, it might increase their demand for hot dogs. How about these vegetable-based hot dogs or Beyond Meat? I assume that Beyond Meat makes hot dogs. I don't know that for sure. I know they make hamburgers. But there are vegetable-based hot dogs out there. They're a substitute for traditional hot dogs. When they become cheaper, what might that do for demand for hot dogs? When the substitute becomes cheaper, what that might do to the demand for hot dogs? Well, if the substitute's cheaper, people are more inclined to switch over to the substitute, right? That would decrease demand for this good, and a decrease in demand means that when it was expensive, even fewer will be purchased. Or when it's cheap, they're kind of still a lot purchased, but not as many as before. And so what we have here is a decrease in demand for hot dogs. So if this price of the substitute gets cheaper, that leads to an increase in demand for the good. All else held constant. So that's a bit about related goods. And now we've illustrated an increase and a decrease in demand. Taste. If celebrities come out and say they have lost their taste for something, like perhaps this morning using Facebook, what does that do, all else held constant, or what's that intended to do, to the demand for Facebook as a platform or social media? The idea of that is to decrease taste among other people for the good. In this example I'm using for it would be Facebook. That should decrease demand for it. The reason that advertisers pay celebrities to pitch their product is precisely to raise demand for their specific product. Tastes change over time. I've just been polling and asking students on a discussion board, hey, how many CDs do you plan to buy this year? And a lot of people are referring to, are saying 0. And one I just remember reading was, well, they scratch very easily. And I don't really want to purchase something that I can't take care of that might get damaged. That's a taste thing, okay? So the taste for CDs is falling with their obsolescence. That is shifting demand to the left. Very closely related to this, though, is the substitute effect, because you can get your music, I know you can get your music from other sources, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Apple Music, and so forth. That's out there. And these substitutes, they may not be getting cheaper, but their cost to us is coming down. That's why this is a strong word. It's just so much more convenient now than it was 10 or 15 years ago to use a streaming service to get your music, because now it's on your phone, it's on your computer, it's in your car. So the cost of the substitute is coming down, even if the price is still whatever it is per song or per monthly fee. So that substitute effect is really killing the market for CDs. But you see, whether you think of it as tastes going away for CDs because they're obsolete, or the availability of the substitutes dominating the music medium, the music delivery market, notice they're both the same. They're telling the same story. Demand is falling for CDs, and over time, and that's happening whichever way we look at this. That's why our list doesn't need to be that rock solid, the same from one textbook to the next textbook to the next textbook. Because even if we interpret the event slightly differently, we still arrive to the same conclusion. What doesn't make sense is to say CD tastes are rising. I don't know. I don't see an argument. Vinyl has been rising. Taste for vinyl has been rising. And of course, that is strictly taste, really. It's in no way cheaper than it used to be to get vinyl. What's happening is it's just become fashionable. So demand has been rising for vinyl delivery of music for the past, I'd say, 8 or 10 years. So I hope that makes sense. Numbers 4 and 5 are sort of just things we can just fall back on going forward. Expectations. If I expect that next year, 2021, the manufacturers of CDs are just going to stop making them, I might increase my consumption of them today. I might make some purchases this year because I want to get it done before it's gone. So my expectations could increase demand at present. That's just using the CDs as an example. If I expect that they're going to be cheaper next year for some reason, why would I buy them now? I might hold off on some of my purchases, and that would decrease demand. The number of buyers is a mechanical kind of relationship. As I said, I've been polling students on a discussion board, and I think we're up to 7 CDs with one section and myself, and how many we might purchase in a year at the arbitrary price that I first posed of roughly $15. If I were polling, instead of polling 25 of us, if I were polling 250 of us, surely we'd be more than 7. We would probably be at, I don't know, sounds like roughly 28. If you ask more people or you involve more people in the market, you're talking about increases in demand. If you ask fewer people or you have fewer people in the market, you're talking about decreases in demand. And that's true no matter which price you're talking about. So these things shift demand right or left, or they increase or decrease demand. I said I'd circle back to income. Miller particularly takes a lot of pages, a lot of dedication to the distinction between normal goods and inferior goods. I described income for normal goods up here with my red arrow and this increase in demand. When we have more money in our pockets, we tend to buy more of most things. These are called normal goods. But there are some goods that we actually buy less of when we have more money in our pockets. I mentioned one of those along the way I suspect would be an inferior good would be mac and cheese. Because I'm speaking to a group of college students, many of you are living on mac and cheese. It goes with being a college student. You don't have a lot of discretionary income as a college student, and it's a wonderful food. It's pretty cheap. But when you get out of college, you're going to start making money, real money. And then as you get older, you start making even more money. And as that happens, aside from buying it for your kids, that's my little girl's favorite food, you don't buy as much mac and cheese. It's pretty typically anyway. Of course, these are generalizations here. And as you have higher income, you shift to other things. So I don't have advice on how to get rich, but one thing I can kind of nudge you toward or have you think about that could help you to maybe do well financially, either go ahead and get rich, in which case you could certainly remember me when you're there, or maybe keep you from going broke in terms of how you set up your retirement portfolio and things like that. This relationship between income and normal goods and income and inferior goods It can be very interesting, and it can be very important in your financial decisions as to where you put yourself working or investing. In 2008, the stock market crashed. The fall of 2008 was due to the housing bubble. 2009, the country was in recession. The Great Recession, it's often called. How do you suppose in that time period stores, corporations like Nordstrom, Lord & Taylor, and Macy's did? They did badly because these are normal goods. When times are good, those retailers saw increases in demand with rising stock prices and rising employment. During good times, when incomes are rising, those stores, those corporations, they saw greater demand. 2009, how did they do? They got crushed because unemployment was very high. People's incomes were down. If you were participating in the stock market, one area where you could have done very well in 2009, these stocks were on fire, were the dollar stores, like Dollar Tree, Dollar General. Suddenly there's another big chain that's escaping me. Doesn't matter. The dollar stores, Five Below, stores like this. Those retailers did very well because people downgraded. These are inferior goods in terms of mediums to buy goods and services, these retailers. I'm using these because everybody, I think, is familiar with these. Through all of this time period, 2008 through the present, net, whether it's the income effect or something else, how has Lord & Taylor and Macy's and Nordstrom done? They've done quite badly. I think all three of those might be in bankruptcy. I'm sure Macy's is. I'm not too sure about the other two. I haven't heard that I remember. They've done very badly. And that's not because of the income effect now. That just was a punch in the face for them in 2009. They've done very badly because of the substitute effect. Because it's so much more convenient. Our costs of ordering from Amazon are so much lower than they used to be as consumers. It's just so convenient for us that people are buying from Amazon and other online retailers and shifting away from those traditional mall-oriented stores. So my point here is that there are normal goods and inferior goods, and they fall under the income determinant. And when incomes rise, demand increases if it's a normal good, but falls if it's an inferior good. And each event we're describing is all else held constant. When in the real world, all else isn't held constant. Macy's, Lord & Taylor, and Nordstrom got punched in the face with the Great Recession, but they were in kind of trouble anyway because people were shifting over to a substitute, specifically Amazon, to make their purchases of the things that those outlets sell. And that has continued on. So you can have multiple effects happening at the same time, but what we're trying to do is model, we're trying to simplify reality. So what we do is we discuss one effect by itself, ceteris paribus, all else held constant, and analyze that effect. And then we can expand our thinking into these other things. But we want to try to be able to focus on just one thing at a time so that we can have a discussion about them and we can model those things. So those are the determinants of demand. These are the shifters of demand. These are the things that change demand. What does price change? Quantity demanded. Sounds like I have to go.